Hello, everyone. All right, I am Dr. William Lee. Welcome to my masterclass. Thank you so much for taking the time today to join me. We're going to spend just about the next hour together. And before we begin, I've been looking at all the people signing on. I'd love to know where everyone is zooming in from. So go ahead and please drop into the chat where you're zooming in from, city, and if you're in what country, if you're actually not from the United States. Let's see. Texas, Peru, Dubai, Australia, New York. It's pounding in fast and furious. Toronto, Charlottesville, London, Bakersfield, Sausalito, Vancouver. Wow. Okay, Newburyport, Jamaica. Love it. South Africa. It is so great for me to be able to connect with everyone. And the reason I'm asking is because every time I do a masterclass, I'm astounded by the number of people that come from around the world. My last masterclass had people from 33 countries. So I'll actually figure that out from here: Brussels, Pittsburgh, Manila, Columbia, South Carolina, Salem, Mexico. It is so fantastic. What I love about food is that food is a way for us to connect to our origins, our culture, and it plays into my philosophy that it's possible for us to love our food, to love our health. And this is, we all come from someplace, and wherever we came from, there's something about the food that we love. And so I think after today, you're going to learn a lot about the foods that you already like that can activate your health through defense systems. I'll explain that in just a few minutes and help you find a way that you can actually eat to beat disease. And in this today's world, also eat to beat stress, because everyone is stressed out over the last 18 months. So my goal from this session is to help you walk away to feel a lot more empowered about how you can take your health into your own hands. I will tell you a little bit about sort of stress. I think we've all had a tough year. I've had a tough year. During the last 18 months, it's been shown that adults as well as children have had more anxiety, depression, stress, uncertainty, financial problems, interference with life plans. All these things actually affect our body and therefore affect our health as well. So I think that it's important to acknowledge that. And on top of that, we've always been trying to find ways to fight cancer, cardiovascular disease, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions. And now we've got this whole other overlay on top of that. But the good news is that the work I've been doing during the pandemic is to figure out how food can also play into our ability to put the power of health into our own hands, because obviously doctors and medical systems are pretty limited in what they can actually do. So I'm going to share with you essentially 30 years worth of my research. I've been working in science, I've been working in medicine, medical research, and I've also been working in food as medicine research. So some of what we're going to be discussing today is what led me to write my New York Times bestselling book, Eat to Beat Disease. Some of you may have read this. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. It is been published and translated into languages all around the world, I think 20 different languages. And part of what I wrote in the book is how do we actually understand when it comes to food and health, not just what foods we should eat, but how does our body respond to what we put inside it? So what I'm about to share with you today is going to be partly from that book, but also partly a sneak peek into my online course, which I'll tell you about at the end. Now, we're also going to be discussing brand new research. I've been working in the area of heart disease and stresses and how they can affect our defenses. So we're going to talk about that as well a little bit today as also. Now, one of the things that we're going to be discussing is how health is not just the absence of disease, but it's really the result of our body's hardwired defense systems that help protect us from invaders from the outside. Like it's the fall, winter in America, we're talking about flu, respiratory syncytial virus, common cold, and of course, COVID. That's invaders from the outside, but our health defenses also protect us from invaders on the inside. And the invader that I want to call your attention to that is one of the most feared is cancer. So yeah, our body has the ability through health defenses to fight off outside invaders as well as inside invaders. And the food that we eat provides the fuel to be able to actually uh, combat these invaders and also set us up for optional functioning, which is what I'm working on with my research right now. So before I jump in, I'd like to know why you guys have signed up for this masterclass. So are you dealing with some illness? You want to use food, how to deal with this? So go ahead and drop the reasons that you came today into the chat, and I'll take a look through. Autoimmunity, preventing disease, melanoma, cancer, wellness, breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate, weight loss, longevity, oral health, okay, fatty liver, mood, neuropathy, stress. Look, all of these things are interconnected. This is what our health defense systems actually do. So trust me when I tell you that a lot of people who come across my work are finding out about it because of this very same reason you're sharing. Now, if you take a look at what's going on in the chat, I mean, it might seem like, man, how can this one guy address all these different conditions? Well, this is what I built my career on. I look at common denominators of health, and I look at common denominators of disease, because I feel like if you can get your arm around the root cause of things and really find solutions to that, then it's sort of like pulling the bow back and sending an arrow through lots of different things at the same time. And it turns out that health defenses work for all the diseases that I'm actually seeing you guys light up. So first, let me give you a little bit of background on myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm a physician. I'm internal medicine. I trained in Boston at Massachusetts General Hospital, which is a Harvard teaching hospital. I'm a scientist. I'm a vascular biologist. I've spent 30 years working in the lab and working in clinical trials, really to try to figure out how do we understand the process of health better at the scientific level, and then how do we develop treatments to be able to overcome some of the diseases that are impeding our health. I'm also an author, as you know. And what led me to come to nutrition is it's kind of an interesting story. I've spent the last 25 years helping to develop biotechnology drugs, in fact, 41 of them, coming out of a field called angiogenesis. And angiogenesis, I'll tell you more about. It's how the body grows blood vessels. It's a common denominator in a lot of 70 different diseases. And when I got started in my work, there were no treatments for angiogenesis dependent diseases, diseases that either have too few blood vessels or too many. And so I set out to try to figure out how do we actually develop biotech for this common denominator. So fast forward, I was fortunate to be able to be involved with projects and leading projects that developed 41 FDA approved treatments for cancer, many different cancers, complications of diabetes, and vision loss. Also wound healing, regenerative therapies. So my kind of track record is really that I know what it takes to develop new products that actually work, that have to go through the FDA. As I was doing this, I started realizing that many of my patients were struggling, suffering terribly from diseases that should have been prevented. And so I thought maybe we could use the same concepts of science and common denominators to prevent disease in the first place, or certainly help people get back on a better track if they were already struggling with these diseases. And when you're talking about prevention or supportive treatments, you really can't talk about drugs only. And although that's what I spent a lot of my career doing, I realized that we got to be talking about something else that could be useful for prevention, and that's where food comes in. Now, I've developed some of the techniques that you develop drugs, but I'm interested in food, so I kind of collided those worlds together to use the same treatments, the same approaches to study drugs in order to study food. And that's how I became one of the people kind of crafting, cutting, ice breaking, opening up the gateways, paving the road for food as medicine. So when I study food as medicine, I'm not getting on a pedestal and waving a frond of kale saying everybody should eat more greens. What I'm doing is sharing with you the research that's undergone into understanding what foods actually work and why. So food actually is, I wrote the book, by the way, Eat to Beat Disease, because food has immediacy. If I told you about a drug treatment that I've been involved with, biotech, it might take 10 years before it ever achieves success. And a lot of times the medications actually fail somewhere along the way. But food, if I told you something that food can do, and I'm about to tell you a lot, that's something you could put into action pretty much right away. So in addition to being a physician and a researcher and an author, I'm also a teacher. I come from a teaching family. Both of my parents were professors, and I've also been involved with teaching myself at the college and the graduate student level. And I also even taught high school, and I mentor and I train students. I've had teaching appointments at Harvard and Dartmouth and at Tufts universities, and I've been asked occasionally to come in to give some lectures to high school students. But one of the things I have been doing is learning a lot from my teaching experience on how I can actually share knowledge with patients. And this is what I've been trying to do all throughout my medical career, because my goal as a doctor, I'm more successful if I'm able to share with you some knowledge that people, patients, are able to take and use to their own benefit between visits to the doctor. So a lot of people think of healthcare as what happens in a doctor's office. I actually believe that healthcare is what you do for yourself between visits to the doctor, and hopefully the time between those visits is longer and longer and longer, because you're doing better and better and better. And so for me, I'm successful if you don't need to see me, and I can actually just see people occasionally to really coach them on what they're doing right, and also to address some of the problems that they weren't actually able to dodge. The other thing that I think is important when it comes to food and health, I've been teaching people, is how do you add food to enhance your health? So much of food and health has been about fear, shame, and guilt, and what you should take away and cut out. One of the things that I learned in my medical practice is that, when you're talking to somebody who's overweight, dealing with diabetes and bad heart disease and lung diseases, and you're telling them, you're scolding them not to eat terrible food, well, what are they going to do when they go home? They're going to go eat more terrible food. And I realized that if I could actually coach people and guide people to feel like what they could add to their diet that's healthy, that they like to eat, is actually good for them. And so I focus on the good things, and I focus on adding things to your life. Then it just, there's just sort of less room to eat the bad things. And so really, you're going to hear me talking about what to add to your life rather than subtraction. So science, health, and food are really my passions. And I'm somebody who's extremely mission driven. So for me, what I do every day is I get up and I do my research. I'm doing my teaching. I try to spend quality time sharing my research and knowledge, which to me, I'm privileged to be able to do this. I run a nonprofit organization. I'm doing this free. And I'm also taking the time that I had, especially during the early days of the pandemic, and I developed an online course, because I know some of you guys are going to be really interested in doing a deep dive. So, spending an hour with me now is great. Spending more time with me and doing a deep dive and spending live time with me to ask questions and interact are people that really are wanting to commit themselves to moving to that next level of health. And so, I know that there's a lot of information coming out about, on the internet and on the media and just sort of in the social networks about magic pills and powders and things that can actually change your life. What I want to do is to tell you that, here's where we are in 2021 and about to go into 2022. It's time for us to actually take control of our own health by understanding our own body and understanding what it is that we actually love to eat, and where the science is that can support the things that we should eat that can help us improve our immune systems and lower our inflammation and kind of contend with the world so that we can go back out and regain our lives and act more freely in ways that are actually just better for us. Even if we didn't have the pandemic, we'd actually be able to live longer, healthier, better lives. So that's one of the things that I want to share with you. I'm really proud to share it with you. And here's sort of like one of my key messages. There's no single superfood. It's really the body that is actually superb in terms of how its reaction. So I'm going to tell you about how the body responds. So let's get started. First, I want to share with you this idea of food as medicine. You've probably heard about it before. And food as medicine is not literally prescribing foods in order to be able to treat a disease, although there is that effort as well. Now, food as medicine is this concept that when we eat food, the stuff inside the food that Mother Nature actually put into the food, which used to defend plants, for example, mostly in fruits and vegetables, they have another job description is that those substances in nature begin interacting with our human body, our human cells. And the interactions that matter are those interactions that activate, light up, sort of trigger our body's health defense system. So, I used to ask the question when I was in medical school, why do people get cancer? Why do people get dementia? Why do people become obese? Those are reasonable questions to ask, and that's how researchers ask those questions. And I'm sure many of you will be asking that same questions, like, why do we get sick? What if we can figure that answer? I want to tell you how I upended that entire concept because I ask a different question now. I ask, why don't we get sick more often? Why don't we get sick more often? How come kids don't get sick, seriously ill more often? How come when we're young adults in our 20s, how come we don't develop, the huge burden of diseases like cancer and diabetes and heart disease more often? How come we don't develop these diseases until later in life? Well, asking that question inverts the entire thought process. If we knew why we don't get sick more often, then we can support those systems that keep us healthy. And so this is what I'm actually telling you. I've spent more than a decade studying this. And what I figured out is our body is hardwired. We are hardwired with 5 health defense systems that we're born with. Actually, they start forming when we're in our mom's womb. When we're born, these health defense systems are inside our body, hardwired, firing on all cylinders from day one, from the day we're born until our very last breath. And how well these systems perform really is what matters in terms of whether or not we stay healthy or we stumble and might get sick. And usually these health defense systems help us regain our health again. And so the question is, how long can we extend this? How do we support and boost these health defenses so that when we're in our vulnerable periods of our life, that we can actually minimize the risk? And what's really cool is that some of these health defense systems can even reverse diseases as well. So let me tell you what we've discovered these 5 health defense systems are. Angiogenesis, which is how the body grows blood vessels. We got 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels. I'm going to tell you about those. Regeneration, our stem cells is inside our bone marrow and it's circulating in our blood as another health defense system. Our microbiome, many of you will have heard about gut health. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how gut health and food works together. Our DNA, most people think of our DNA as our genetic code, and it is our genetic code, but that's kind of a concept that we figured out, almost 50 years ago now. So what are we thinking about our DNA now? What's the state of the art thinking? Our DNA protects us from the environment. And then our immunity. Our immune system is more powerful than we ever thought. So powerful, in fact, that if we had cancer, our immune system can wipe it out, even if the cancer is spread. So, this is coming from really the front leading edges, the edge of the envelope of science. Each of these defense systems, there is some biotech or pharmaceutical company working on them to develop some drugs. I will tell you that Mother Nature has beat drug companies to the punch because there are tons of foods, more than 200 foods that I write about in my book, Eat to Beat Disease, that actually have the ability, the proven ability through science and research to activate our health defenses. So we'll come back to these defenses and I'll dive into them and tell you about some of the foods in just a moment. In the meantime, I want to kind of start off by talking a little bit about heart disease because just last week, I was doing some research that I shared on television on a show in the US called Live with Kelly and Ryan. It's one of the morning television shows. And they wanted to talk, in the fall, before getting to the holidays, about heart health and how to actually have heart wellness. Now, heart disease is the #1 killer in developed countries. And in fact, last year in America, heart disease killed twice the number of people that COVID did. So this is, I know we have all this attention onto our infectious diseases and COVID and pandemic, but heart disease is really far outweighs that. So we really need to be able to take good care of it. So it's a leading cause of death in the United States. It's a #1 cause of women, by the way. Many women actually are thinking about breast cancer being an important thing to prevent. I can tell you heart disease trumps that. It's so much more important. And so there's some surprising new research that shows that our gut health can help protect our body by lowering cholesterol. So this is what I talked about in television. The first thing we need to do to protect our heart health is to really watch our blood cholesterol. And this is from a test that we get, our lipid test, when we go to our annual doctor's visits. They do our measure our lipid profile. Well, it turns out that high fiber foods that protect our gut health, like beans, chickpeas, lentils, or fermented foods like yogurt and sauerkraut and kimchi, feed our gut bacteria, and our gut bacteria release these metabolites, these small chemicals, when we feed the gut these kinds of foods, especially fiber, prebiotic foods. And these little particles that the microbiome, our gut bacteria release, actually helps to lower our bad cholesterol and help us have more good cholesterol. So this is actually a really important thing. If we feed our gut bacteria well, they pay us back by helping us manage our lipids, our blood cholesterol. Second thing that I've been working on is how to watch your blood pressure. So high blood pressure is a silent killer. It's one of the top causes for heart disease, including stroke. And one of the things is that, I'm sure many of you know about high blood pressure. Some of you may be taking high blood pressure medicines, but one of the easiest ways to control high blood pressure is to watch the amount of sodium that we actually have in our food. So cutting down on your sodium, like salted chips, savory snacks, processed foods can often have a lot of sodium. Soup, canned soup, which I grew up on canned soup. If you go back and look at the can now, like a single can of soup can have 1,000 grams of sodium, which is just about all the salt that you need in a whole day. So in a single can of soup. And so going for low sodium and watching out sodium in your food, cutting it down or out is actually a really helpful thing. However, here is something really cool that I shared on TV. Research in food as medicine is showing that there are some foods that you can eat to help you lower your blood pressure more naturally. Beets and spinach both grow in the ground, and they contain a lot of nitrogen from the soil. And that nitrogen, when we chew our beets or spinach, chew, there's a gut bacteria that's in our tongue, microbiome in our tongue. Our mouth actually is part of the gut. And when we're chewing, the bacteria in our tongue naturally digests the nitrogen from the beets and spinach, and it converts it into a form that when we swallow it, it gets absorbed into our bloodstream as nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is the natural substance that dilates our blood vessels, lowers our blood pressure. And so beets and spinach are a natural way. Beet juice can do the same thing to lower blood pressure. Here's something really cool to know. If you lower your systolic blood pressure comes in two numbers, the top number and the bottom number. Top number is called systolic. 120 over 80 is a normal blood pressure. If you lower your number, your top number, by 1 point, so 140 to 139 or 130 to 129, 1 point lowers your risk of having a stroke by 5%. So even small changes can have big benefits later on down the way. And again, you can use food to actually get there. So it's really quite amazing. And of course, the other thing to watch out for heart disease is blood sugar, because although sugar is really important in our body, even for our brain, like all our organs and cells need a little bit of sugar. When you add a lot of added sugar, one of the things that does is it overtaxes your body. And it's linked to diabetes and obesity, and lots of sugar can actually damage the lining of our blood vessels. So one of the things that I always say is that, cut down or cut out soda, which is a huge source of added sugar. And if you like candies or cakes, really cut them down, eat them in moderation if you're a sweet tooth. And that's different, by the way, than eating healthy amounts of natural sugars in fruits and vegetables, because you're getting a lot of other things along with those fruits and vegetables: fiber, phytochemicals, polyphenols, and you get some natural sugar as well. But when you have candies or cakes or soda, you're really getting a gigantic load, a gargantuan load of sugar and bolus and not much else. So cut those down, cut those out. It's better for you, lowers your risk of diabetes and obesity. And by the way, your gut bacteria will thank you too, because high amounts of sugar also damage our gut bacteria. So again, one of the things I'm working on for my next book is how, working on these aspects are able to take us to the next level of health. But for right now, I want to tell you sort of what I'm actually doing. Anybody, by the way, who's interested in getting involved with my clinical research that I'm doing for my next book, just please enter yes into the chat, and we will come back and be in touch with you. I'm working on how do you optimize your metabolism? How do we use weight to actually help to impact your life for longevity? And how do we actually take you however fit you are now? Do you want to get to that next level? Just say yes, and I will be in touch with you. My team will be in touch with you, and I'll let you know soon how you can actually get involved. All right, one last thing I want to talk about heart health and brain health is stress. Chronic stress, which I've had as much as you guys, really puts an undue burden on our health. One thing it does, stress causes our adrenal glands, which sit on top of our kidneys, to release a lot of cortisol. It puts a demand on our heart. Our heart beats faster. It also changes our microbiome. It wrecks our blood vessels, our circulation. It screws up our stem cells, and it lowers our immunity and causes us to be more inflamed. So how do we actually lower stress? Well, it's not just food, it's lifestyle as well. So getting enough sleep, exercising lowers stress, being with friends and family safely, family, by the way, that you like, actually can lower stress. But I do want to share with you some interesting stuff. So eating this can actually help you lower stress as well. This is a bar of chocolate. This is 86% chocolate. Anything over 80 will actually do it. It's cacao, dark chocolate. I'll tell you, this is chocolate I helped to create with a friend of mine, Katrina Markov. She has figured out somehow how to make really dark chocolate, completely smooth, not bitter at all. And it's with Vosges chocolate. It's called a line of chocolate called Pure Plant. So research have actually studied healthy volunteers who are stressed out, and they measured their blood and their urine to look for stress markers. And what they did is they gave them dark chocolate, kind of like what I just showed you, dark chocolate to eat for a couple of weeks, 2 weeks. And they found that when they measured in the blood and in urine for people who they ate chocolate, the stress markers, eating chocolate lowered cortisol, lowered adrenaline, and lowered these stress markers in their urine as well. And so high anxiety people can lower their stress markers by eating chocolate. Now, what does chocolate do? It actually also helps the gut bacteria, by the way, also improves brain function, and also really, really dark chocolate with cacao has fiber in it. So most people don't think about dark chocolate having fiber, but it actually does. All right, now let's dive right into my favorite topic, which are the health defense systems. This is probably the most important thing that you're going to learn about today. Our health defense systems. What are they, and what can we eat to actually support them? So if you're taking notes, now's the time to actually bust out your pencils or your whatever notes you take on digitally. Our first health defense system is angiogenesis. Angiogenesis is how our body grows blood vessels. Everyone watching this now has 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels packed inside our body. So that's an amazing amount of highways and byways that deliver oxygen and nutrients. Whatever we're eating gets delivered through our blood vessels into our cells and our organs. So how does angiogenesis work? It really feeds and it gives us nutrition to be able to be healthy. However, it is also a system that helps us fight cancer. Why? Because although we got 60,000 miles, our body prevents extra blood vessels from growing when they're not necessary. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why we don't develop cancer more often, because all of us watching this are also forming microscopic cancers in our body right now. Cancer is actually like a pimple. They're always forming. We've got 40 trillion cells in our body. They're dividing. They make a couple of mistakes, and bingo, you've got little microscopic cancers. But these little microscopic cancers can never grow up because they don't have a blood supply. So they get to be about the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen, and they cannot expand any further. They sit there, and then our immune system wings by like patrol cars looking for bad guys, and you see this microscopic cancer, and it takes them right out, and it'll never be a problem for most of us. Now, when tumors are able to hijack our blood supply, which can occur, Then they recruit their own private blood supply, and now the cancers are fed. They get oxygen and nutrients, just like our healthy organs. And this is the research I've done. When blood vessels touch a tumor, a tiny microscopic cancer, it allows that cancer to grow explosively. A tumor that's not fed by blood vessels, tip of a ballpoint pen. Tumor that actually is fed, once a blood vessel touches it, will grow 16,000 times in 2 weeks. And the same blood vessels that feed the cancer allow cancer cells to escape into the circulation. We call this metastases. So what do we need to do? We need to shore up our body's ability to prevent extra blood vessels from growing. Our health defense system is naturally hardwired to do that. How do we actually do that better? Well, it turns out there are more than 100 different foods that have been studied. I've studied almost all of them that can enhance your body's ability to cut off the blood supply that might be feeding cancer. So you keep your good, healthy circulation, you prevent the extra blood vessels from feeding cancers. What are some of these foods? Tomatoes. Tomatoes contain a bioactive natural chemical called lycopene. And clinical studies have shown that tomatoes can reduce the risk of prostate cancer. Prostate cancer requires a blood supply in order to grow, to become a problem. That men who eat 2 to 3 servings of cooked tomato sauce, 2 to 3 times a week, actually have a 30% lower risk of developing prostate cancer. Why? Because the bioactive in the tomato sauce prevents the blood tumors from recruiting those blood vessels. Now, men that do develop prostate cancers, the more tomato sauce you eat, the less aggressive the prostate cancer actually is. So this has been studied, by the way, in 30,000 men. This is like a human study, not just a theoretical study. And what I've done is gone back into the lab to start really digging and working out exactly what the mechanism of action is. So, by the way, this also works for breast cancer, but in a different way as well. Another anti-angiogenic, cancer-starving food, soy. Now, there's an urban legend that soy actually causes breast cancer as a risk. Completely wrong. Urban legend. Soy contains phytosterols, which does have a plant estrogen, which looks nothing like human estrogen, blocks human estrogen. It's like a Mother Nature's tamoxifen. And studies have shown that eating soy lowers the risk of the danger of breast cancer. And in fact, it improves survival in women who actually have breast cancer. If you've got breast cancer or you're at risk for breast cancer, the more soy you eat, the lower your risk is, the better your survival. So other foods, black raspberries, cacao. I actually studied the chocolate that was used to make this, and we actually found that it kills leukemia cells and lymphoma cells. So dark chocolate also cuts off the blood supply feeding cancer. Pomegranate juice, green tea. I wanted to show you this. I'm actually rarely found without a cup of green tea around. This is whole leaf green tea, but you can use matcha, you can use iced tea, works as well as hot tea. I always tell a story in my book. I had a great uncle that lived to 104, and he lived at the base of a tea mountain, and every single day he drank like 6 cups of green tea and stayed very physically active, walking up the hills and trails as well. Green tea, by the way, has been shown to reduce the risk of colon cancer. Why? Because the polyphenols in green tea cut off the blood supply, feeding cancers. Now, one of the things that I've been studying is how much do you need to eat in order to get the benefit. We only have an hour here, so I can't go through every single one, but I want to show you. Blueberries are anti-angiogenic. I had some this morning for breakfast. Some of my favorites. Love blueberries. The color blueberries is made by anthocyanins, a natural dye. 1 cup a week has been shown in human studies to fight breast cancer. Okay, also boost your immune system. Black raspberries. You need a little bit more if you are fighting bladder cancer. 7 cups a day of black raspberries can fight bladder cancer. But if you're trying to fight cardiovascular disease, it can also improve heart health as well. And you only need 4 individual berries a day. So again, food doses is something really cool that we're working on. Walnuts. Walnuts have been shown to help improve outcomes for colon cancer. Okay, so if you're fighting colon cancer, how do you actually how do you improve your odds? How do you fight colon cancer better? Nuts contain fiber, which feeds your gut microbiomes, also anti-angiogenic. Turns out you need only 11 walnuts per week, 22 halves of walnuts. So think about that. You're watching Netflix and you're snacking on walnuts. If you have 22 of them over the course of a week, that's easy to do. That's, just two or three of them a day, 3 halves a day. That actually is a dose that's been effective, shown effective through studies, human studies, for colon cancer. So angiogenesis, first health defense system, we want to be able to actually boost our ability to prevent cancer, raise those shields, okay? Second health defense system, regeneration. How many of you know about the idea that starfish and salamanders can regenerate, but humans can't? Like, that's what I was taught when I was in grade school. A salamander can regenerate a leg, starfish can regenerate an arm, but turns out that I've worked in the biotech world in regenerative medicine and cell therapy, stem cell therapy, adult stem cell therapy. Turns out that humans can regenerate. We've been working to figure out how do you inject the heart with stem cells to regrow parts of the heart that are injured after a heart attack. Turns out that although that's not ready for prime time, we are far away from getting to an effective treatment with that. We'll get there, but not yet. Turns out that we're naturally regenerating every single day. Our stem cells live in our bone marrow. We've got more than 75 million of them. Everyone here watching this, you've got more than 70 million stem cells that are in your bone marrow, in your lungs, in your liver, in your skin, even hidden in your fat, and it helps your body to regenerate every day. How do we know we regenerate? Because our hair grows back, our skin grows back. We slough off the lining of our gut and it grows back. But did you know that if you actually cut off the tip of your lung, okay, or have it injured by COVID or a pneumonia, it'll grow back. The tip of the lung can grow back. Or the liver, your liver, if you were to remove 2/3 of your liver and only have 1/3 of it left, just a little nub of liver, that 1/3 of the liver will grow back the entire liver. So the playbook, the textbook about regeneration is being thrown out. We're now taking a new look. And while biotech companies are working on stem cell therapies, I'm still helping them do this. Here's the cool thing. There are dozens of foods that can actually help our body's stem cells come out harder and faster and better, work better. These include dried fruit. So fruit skin contains something called ursolic acid. And fruit skin, which you can find, if you eat an apple. By the way, this is one reason to buy organic if you can, or organically grown in the organic style. You don't need the label as long as you know it's grown without pesticides. It's really hard to wash off the pesticides off the skin of any kind of fruit. You want to eat fruit skin like apples or apricots or even cranberries. They actually contain ursolic acid. Ursolic acid mobilizes stem cells, increases stem cells that live in our bone marrow, get into our bloodstream, and help us regenerate. Now, how important are our stem cells? I'll tell you something amazing that I learned. If your stem cells suddenly stopped working right here, right now, like you just turned them off like a light, power goes out in your stem cells, you'd be dead in a week. That's how important our stem cells are, because they power up our immune system, they power our heart, they regenerate us. So ursolic acid, when you get them in, you get them in dried fruits, dried cranberries, dried blueberries, dried cherries. You're drying the seeds down. Look, I might on a good day be able to eat apricots, because the apricot skin is ursolic acid, but eating 6 of them, that'd be a lot of work. But if you were to get dried apricots, I could probably eat 6 dried apricots pretty quickly, and you get the dried skin. So organic dried apricots is a good choice as well. Stem cells, dark chocolate, by the way, which I showed you earlier, also stimulates stem cells. This has been studied in men with heart disease. 80% cacao or higher can mobilize a stem cell out of your bloodstream and actually help to rebuild your heart and make your blood vessels healthier. So we don't have to wait until biotech companies come out with stem cell therapies. We can actually start to regenerate ourselves. We already do regenerate. We can actually use foods to actually drive that further. Oh, a few other cool regenerative foods: whole grains, whole wheat, barley, oats, whole oats. Here's a surprise food that most people don't realize is a whole grain: popcorn. Popcorn contains bioactives because it's actually the whole grain of the corn just popped open. What you want to make sure you do is you don't want to actually douse the popcorn with butter and artificial flavorings and seasonings and all those kind of things. That's not so good. But again, lots of different ways. Greens can also supercharge our stem cells. Collard greens, mustard greens, Swiss chard. I made some Swiss chard last night for dinner. Goji berries, these are these little red Asian berries. You can actually put them in your cereal. You can just snack on them. They contain zeaxanthin. Zeaxanthin is actually a natural polyphenol that actually supercharges your stem cells so they can regenerate the organs better. So you could take whatever you got and make it work even better with food. So second, health defense system. Third, microbiome. Our gut microbiome, we've got 39 trillion bacteria living inside our body, most of it in our gut, also in our skin. But when we actually feed ourselves, the part that we're not absorbing in our body, we used to just, say in med school, we tell our patients, yeah, you eat your food, you absorb the nutrients in your digestive system, and the rest of it you just poop out. Well, it turns out that that's not quite true. The new science, food is medicine, is that whatever we're not absorbing as in our human body, our human cells, we pass on to the gut microbiome, and our gut bacteria digest most of the rest of it. And when you feed them fiber and bioactives, they get healthier. When they're healthier, they do all kinds of things. They release anti-inflammatory substances. They, as I said earlier, they right size our blood cholesterol, our blood lipids. They can control our blood sugar better. We actually think that you can control your diabetes by actually right sizing your microbiome. But here's a real shocker. The microbiome can also control neurotransmitters in our brain. So I've done research with a colleague at MIT that showed that, if you actually give the right kind of microbiome to the gut, you can have the brain release oxytocin, which is a social hormone. But it also, microbiome can influence the release of serotonin, GABA, dopamine. These are feel-good hormones. Psychiatrists will write, therapists will write drugs to actually, make your mood better. Here's a way of actually helping to treat our brain. Maybe you can come down on your medicines. Maybe you don't need medicines at all. With our gut microbiome, this is a whole other defense system, not just physical, but also mental and emotional, because many of these neurotransmitters influence our mood. So when we have a problem with our gut microbiome, it's called dysbiosis, which can cause inflammation in the body. That inflammation can set up for cancer as well. So here's the great news, is that we can take charge of our lives by feeding our microbiome. So what are some foods that can do this? Well, foods that contain fiber, like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, mushrooms. Mushrooms are soft, but they actually have this soluble fiber called beta-glucan. And one of my favorites are kiwi. 1 kiwi a day can start to reset your microbiome overnight. So it's pretty amazing that you can actually do this. If you have a kiwi for breakfast, cut it open, eat it with a spoon, your microbiome is going to thank you for it all day and all night long. And so it's really quite amazing what you can do with prebiotic foods. Probiotic foods are like yogurt. If you eat dairy, sauerkraut, kimchi, these are flavorful things, traditional foods. That's one of the things that I'm actually researching now, is how traditional foods can be useful to light us up. Because, it's one thing to actually create biotech foods, Franken foods, engineer foods. That's pretty cool stuff. I mean, as a scientist, I could admire that. But one of the things that I think is that it makes it a lot easier for us to get behind foods that come from the cultures that we're familiar with, or foods from cultures that we want to explore and that we love to eat. Like kimchi, it's Korean food. Let's try that. That can light up our taste buds. As I mentioned to you, dark chocolate can also help our microbiome. One thing I want to tell you about chocolate, I talked a lot about this, is make sure that it doesn't actually have added sugar. So natural sweeteners are what you want. You don't want to actually have refined sugars put into that. That's the little tip for the third defense system, which was microbiome. DNA. Remember, I told you our DNA is way more than our genetic code. It's also a defense system. So here's how it works. Our DNA has to run like instructions, our genetic code, to make our life, to make us alive, to keep us functioning. But it's very sensitive to the environment, because if you have too much radiation, solar radiation, lying out in the sun, getting sunburned, going to a tanning salon, all things that are not so good for you, if your DNA gets mutated, what do you get? Melanoma, okay? But think about all the things that assault our DNA every single day. If you're pumping gas and you're breathing in the fumes, that's causing DNA mutations in your lung. Off-gassing from your carpet. Man, that's a new carpet that just got put in, right? Yeah, it was a new carpet. Now the chemicals are coming off it. You're breathing it, and it's causing DNA damage. Our DNA, just on the basis of walking around every day in the outdoor world, makes more than 10,000 mistakes every single day. And each of those mistakes can become a mutation. 10,000 chances of having a mutation. Why don't we develop cancer more often? Because our DNA is hardwired as a defense system to protect us against the environment, so it can fix the DNA. Prevents the DNA from becoming too erroneous, okay? It fixes it. It's like our body's spell check that's running all the time. And that's one of our health defenses. We're beginning, by the way, to realize way beyond cancer, all the problems that can occur when our DNA can't fix itself well. Here are some diseases with DNA mutations, DNA defenses are breached: Alzheimer's, autism, celiac disease, cystic fibrosis, depression, diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, PTSD, rheumatoid arthritis. It's really quite amazing, all the things that we're beginning to realize when our DNA is damaged, the domino effect it can have in our brain and all of our other organs. So we need to prevent that breach. We need our DNA to fix itself better. It's like spell check on steroids. How do we actually get our mistakes to be fixed better? 10,000 mistakes a day. I want mine to be fixed perfectly if we can. It's like that document that's been perfectly spell checked and your teacher cannot find one error that's wrong with it. So here are some of the foods that I'm working on that can activate our DNA defenses. Green tea, back again, okay? It helps us fix our DNA, prevents damage to our DNA. Coffee. Now let's see, I also was sipping, I used to live in Italy and for a while, and so I always have a cup of espresso. I love to have coffee for those people who can have coffee. Kiwi, back to my kiwi. So eating one kiwi a day, I told you about the microbiome. Guess what? Eating one kiwi a day has been studied in humans. One kiwi a day can protect the DNA, your DNA, from being damaged by 60%, kind of throws up a shield, prevent damaged DNA. And if you eat 3 kiwis a day, it helps you rebuild your damaged DNA. So one prevents the damage from coming in, the second one builds it back. It sends in the contractors to come in to repair the damage that's actually there. So again, this is the kind of research I'm doing. Food as medicine. You use the tools that we actually use to study, like biotech, to really be able to understand the foods that come from our cultures that we love to eat already, that taste great. And this to me is really how to actually get deeper. That's why I put together my online course for anybody who really wants to dive deeply. And then fifth health defense system, our immunity, our immune system. Now we all know from the pandemic how important our immune system is. Everyone wants to have a strong immune system, but like long before we dealt with COVID, we needed to have our grandmothers told us you have to have a strong immune system to protect yourself against a common cold. And remember, I told you at the very beginning of this, a strong immune system can protect you against cancer, because those little microscopic cancer tumors that can't grow if you don't have a blood supply because our angiogenesis defenses are working, you need a strong immune system to patrol your body to look for those microscopic cancers to wipe them out. So by the way, if you have had cancer or you have cancer and you're fighting it, you still want that immune system to be able to work on your side. You want more of those bad guys to be picked off. This is called cancer immunotherapy. And we now know that eating foods like pomegranate or Concord grape or even cranberries can actually up your immune system's ability to be able to search and destroy cancers, even cancers that are established, especially if you're actually using immunotherapy, which you've probably seen on television. They're talking about immunotherapy, like these are called checkpoint inhibitors that can have a powerful. It's the single most groundbreaking advance in cancer treatment in the last 100 years is be able to activate our own immune system to fight cancer. My own mother, by the way, was saved. She had cancer that had spread throughout her body, and now we gave her immunotherapy. We put her on a diet that actually ramped up her immune system. And after 3 treatments, which took place over 9 weeks, all of the cancer disappeared. It's happened with time and time and again with other people as well. We have to actually use our defenses that we were given, we were born with. And so let's talk about flu season. I hope that if you're in the United States or anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, you're probably getting a flu vaccine. That's pretty important. Turns out that eating broccoli sprouts or adult broccoli can boost our immune response to the vaccine. So there's a research study done to show that if you got a flu vaccine, if you drank a shake made with broccoli sprouts, add to the broccoli, the shake, anything else you want, bananas or whatever, make it taste good. You could increase your immune system's response to the flu vaccine by 22 times. There's no medicine that could actually do that. So this is not food instead of medicine. This is food and medicine, the flu vaccine, to ramp up your defenses against the influenza. Blueberries can also improve our immune cells. So again, I told you, one of my favorites are these blueberries. Okay, blueberries ramp up your immune system to about 3 times what you would normally walk around. And if you're an athlete and you work out, you'll know that working out a lot, especially if you're a competitive athlete, your immune system goes down after working out. If you eat blueberries, it'll keep it rock stable. So keep you in a good way. So these are just some of the amazing things that you can actually do to activate your immune system. By the way, some of the foods like blueberries and green tea, pomegranate that activate your immune system, okay, also lower inflammation. So that's really what we want. We want strong defenses against bad guys, against outside invaders and inside invaders, and we want lower inflammation. So this is where I think science comes into play, because a lot of people say, well, you don't want any inflammation, you don't want your immune system down. No, you want the good part of the immune system up. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to share with you guys. I'm a scientist and a doctor. The God is in the details. So you have to be very specific about what we're talking about. That's why food as medicine research is really important. So I just downloaded a ton of information to you guys, including a small list of foods that activate your health defenses. But I hope you've started to hear that it's possible to lean into food that you like to eat in order to be able to amplify and arm yourself. And this is really why I created the Eat to Beat Disease course, to give people who are serious about learning how to harness your health defenses, give you a deep dive. This is an online course. It's got videos, a workbook, it's got tables and shopping lists and guides for you to kind of like navigate the supermarket or the farmer's market or in your kitchen. How do you put the right foods into your life based on what your own needs are? So in this next class, I'm also going to give you additional information about immunity, since we're getting into the winter, and a little bit about weight loss, which is interesting. I saw some people are interested in weight loss. Did you know that if you lose just 5 pounds as a woman, you protect yourself against breast cancer by lowering the risk by 18%. So small changes can make big outcomes. And even skinny people actually have body fat that they can lose, because there's invisible fat that's packed and wrapped around our organs, even in somebody who looks really slender. So that's an area that I'm actually working on. So the core of my course includes a method I developed called 5x5x5. It's a method to actually put everyday eating, healthy eating into your life. And I teach you how do you enjoy your food in a way to it's aligned with your health, all using science. I call the plan 5x5x5 because it's 5 health defense systems. We encounter food 5 times a day. So it means that you've got 5 shots on goal every day in order to be able to light up your health. Now, I get asked, what do I eat every day? And the list is pretty long, but I'll just tell you a few that I had in the last 24 hours. I had Swiss chard, I had blueberries, I had capers, I had some mushrooms, I had coffee, and I had tea. And so again, all of these foods I've known that they actually activate my health defenses. And some of these, you guys would probably love to have in your everyday single life, but I navigate myself knowing the kind of the food lists that I teach about in my course. So here's what I want to do. I want to personally invite each of you to my next Eat to Beat Disease course, which is starting in 2 weeks, which is Monday, October 18th. The course is 100% online. It's taught only by me. I come to you live each week with office hours, but there's on-demand videos. So you can watch the videos on your own time. And then every Monday night, I come on with live office hours where you're going to see me. We're going to talk about things. You can ask your questions. I'll also share with you kind of like smoking hot research that I'm doing or that I'm hearing about that I want to share with you. And then you get to join a community of like-minded people. This year alone, I've had about 1,000 people from 30 countries join the Eat to Beat Disease kind of community. So it'd be great to actually get you guys to meet new people who are all interested in doing this deep dive. And once the course is over, you get to have access to all the material for a lifetime, and you get to actually connect with an alumni group that have taken the course in the past. And what I love about my alumni group is they're very active. They share recipes. They talk about little tips that they're learning. And because they come from all different parts of the world, you can share recipes of stuff that you wouldn't even think about. But these are just ordinary people that are finding ways to actually take these ingredients, these disease health boosting, disease fighting ingredients, to be able to actually put it into life in a way that tastes good. So look, this is an investment of time and money, but it's an investment in your health. It's the best thing you can do. I know people spend thousands of dollars doing things that actually take down your health defenses. And then they're like, well, I don't want to actually put any money or time into figuring out how to actually prevent myself from a disease like cancer. But for those of you who have attended this masterclass, you can gain access to the course. I'm going to give you 44% off the price. And I also have a payment plan available. So here's what you get. It's a 4-week course. I go into great depth about each of the health defense system. No other course teaches about health defenses. And I share with you many, many, many more foods, as well as the techniques for how to shop for them, cook for them, store them, lots of practical tips. Every week you work through the videos at your own pace. It takes just about 2 hours a week to watch the videos. It's not a lot of time. And then if you add in an hour of a live office hour with me, that's 3 hours in total. I call it like an extended Netflix session. It's 3 hours a week, then you can actually, it really is, you know, like life-changing. And I put in a section about what I do in my own life and how I approach eating in my own life. It's called What Dr. Lee Eats. The weekly live office hours is something I really enjoy. I believe in this, that, you know, I make myself available live for Q&A. It's an hour session every Monday night. And I also send through my team scientific research news as I see it. Every now and then I'll see something that is jaw-dropping. I got to tell people this. And so if you're in my course, I just send it out to you so you can actually deepen your scientific knowledge. Recently, there was an article that came out that showed that microplastics that we might eat in our food are even found in children and babies. And so again, you know, like that's information that we all need to know, you know, why it's better to use glass instead of plastic to store things. So I kind of truly believe that progress in science should not stay buried in the lab or in journals. I bring it out to my students in a course. And I also have a workbook that's packed with my own notes from the videos and tables of foods and food dosing. I remember I talked a little bit about food dosing. Everybody wants to know, like, not just what food I should eat, how much I should eat. So I share that with you as well. So if you have read my book, Eat to Beat Disease, what you should know is that this is not a summary of the book. What is in the course is the research that went into writing the book. You can only put so much into a book, and it contains more research that I've done since the book came out. It's not a diet course, not a rigid diet plan. This is not for you, and it's not just a food list. It's really about how do you get into the right mindset? How do you take the knowledge and create lifestyle change based on science? So this is personalized as well. So it's not like a one size fits all. So if you're on a strict diet or not, if you're gluten-free or not, if you're dairy-free or not, if you're vegan or vegetarian or not, if you're on keto, Whole30, any type of diet, the approach that I teach you actually can actually maneuver and be agile with those. If you cook yourself or you only eat out, if you got food allergies or you need to do swap outs, all possible to do. So this is anyone who wants a healthy lifestyle, personalizing it for you in a way that no matter where you are in your health journey, you can actually benefit from the course. So the link to sign up for the course is in the chat right now. And you'll also receive an email shortly after this masterclass, which will then have a replay, a link to a replay. So if you wanted to go back and hear more, take more notes, listen to it again, we're going to give you a replay. And then all the details of the course are also along in that email with the replay. The one thing I want to tell you is that spaces are limited in the course. I found it was so popular. I've had to cut off the number of people that can register because when I do these office hours, I really want to make myself available. So to have like thousands of people, it just doesn't work. So I have to limit the course in order to be able to really give you my time personally. So I hope to see you at the course kickoff. It's on October 18th. And I truly appreciate you taking the time to tune in for today's masterclass. You come from so many different parts of the world. Makes me excited to think about sharing this information. And I'll leave you with one thing, and I hope you don't forget, which is my motto is love your food to love your health. So thank you, and I hope to see you again soon.